Welcome to True Green and Gold, where we talk all things Elks. I'm joined today by a special guest. This is Steve Bolen, co founder of the amateur agency, former compatriot writer on Last Word on CFL. He's a big Riders fan, so I brought him on for this week's matchup. While we got back to back with the Riders coming up this week. How you doing tonight, Steve?
I'm doing fantastic, Josh. I'm super excited to be on here and definitely remember our days writing together on Last Word on CFL. It wasn't too long ago, actually. So definitely been an interesting season, and I'm excited to chat some CFL ball with you.
Definitely. Well, I have a personal question to lead off with. So, how did you discover the CFL and become a Riders fan?
Yeah, so this one, it's kind of more one of the straightforward stories, I guess, you'll get of a fan becoming a fan of a team in the league. My dad and his entire side of the family is from Saskatchewan, more specifically Gravelburg, Saskatchewan, a very small town. And so growing up, they bled green, and that was kind of their thing. And so I believe I went to my first Rider game in 2000. I would have been 4 years old, and I don't remember that one very well. But then from about 2006 to 2011, we went to every Labor Day Classic. We back then you were able to, like, my uncles and aunts would be able to exchange their season tickets for like a big block. And about, like, my dad had seven brothers, by the way, so our cousins, uncles, aunts, we'd all roll into old Taylor Field. And the one I remember the most was 2007, when Kerry Joseph ran up the middle against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to win the game. I think it was like a 20 or 30-yard run for the touchdown. And ever since then, 2007, 2006-ish, I've been hooked, and I've bled green from that day.
Gotcha. That's a great story. Love it when it's a family affair. If you have not realized this by how I talk, an American. So the CFL is a bit of an odyssey for me, obviously. I grew up watching the NFL, but in college, I went to the University of Missouri, and James Franklin was the quarterback there whenever I was attending. Met him in college. He was a really good guy. And I guess I kind of knew of the CFL, but didn't really follow it all that much. But after Franklin had a cup of coffee with the Lions, he went up north of the border. And I was like, well, I like him, so I guess I'll root for Edmonton now. And I liked the name the Eskimos at the time. We'll get to more on the name change later, but yeah, I can't say it was a family affair. It was just somewhat of an individual thing. It could have been anybody, but yeah, ended up being Edmonton. I like the green and gold colors, so it all worked out in the end. Except for the fact I really started paying attention in earnest in about 2016, and well, things have not been great since then. So we won't get into all that because everybody knows all of that history. So, my next question regarding your riders more specifically, what's been your impression of Cody Fajardo this year? His numbers for the year aren't eye popping. I think he has 10 touchdowns to 9 picks. He's among the league leaders in passing yards, kind of because he's been one of the few that's stayed healthy all season. So, do you think that he has played better than his numbers suggest, worse than his numbers suggest, or about what his numbers would suggest?
I think with Cody, what you see is what you're getting right now. And right now he's playing like an average quarterback. We've seen across the CFL that, offense is down altogether. I mean, you have guys like Bo Levi Mitchell, who I've contended for a while is, in the running, if he plays for another 9, 10 years to be the greatest quarterback of all time. He right now is sitting at like what, 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So, I mean, that right there tells you that it's been a weird year passing wise. Like, we're not seeing that high flying excitement we're used to seeing. For Cody specifically, it's been a bit disappointing. I remember being very optimistic when we hired Jason Maas back in early 2020, obviously before the 2020 season was canceled. And I thought he'd bring out the best in Fajardo. I never liked Maas as a head coach, but I always knew he was like kind of an offensive guru. And, if you take away, maybe not the best, he's not the best leader, but if you just allow him to focus on the X's and O's, I mean, I was super stoked about that. Higher there. And protection issues have certainly haven't helped the situation. But I'm in Calgary right now. It's where it's where I reside. And I was at the first Saskatchewan Calgary game live, and it just seemed like Cody, wasn't going through his progressions. And that was the game where afterwards he went off about the 50-50 deep balls and not connecting on them. But I mean, there was a couple throws there where he just straight up missed his receivers. It was not his receivers, lack of ability to go up and get the 50-50 ball. It was, he had just plainly missed the throw. And so, and he was just locking onto his first read. And I'm no film guru. I wish we could get more all 24 film to actually kind of look at the full picture. But just based on what I saw that game, it just looked like a lot of first read throws. And again, that could be a protection issue. But from the flash that we saw in 2019, this has certainly been a disappointment. I think there's been a multitude of factors. I'm still a big supporter. I'm still behind Cody 100%. I'm not calling for Isaac Harker in any way or Paxton Lynch. But, I think just altogether offense has been down, but it's been especially disappointing because I think, with a little better play out of Cody in certain games, they could certainly have a better record than 7-4, I think is what they currently have right now.
Yeah, it's true. Going off that a little bit, I was seeing articles in various websites that say the CFL has an entertainment problem, that it's not the high flying football that it used to be. And I guess I kind of get what they're coming from, but I think we just got to be patient with this. I figured coming off a missed year, everybody was going to be a little bit rusty. And I also thought that the league would kind of be really sandwiched in tight. I thought we'd see a lot of parity, a lot of upsets, and it's kind of borne out that way, except for the very top and the very bottom. Winnipeg is dominating everybody. Edmonton and Ottawa are terrible. Otherwise, everybody else is in within two-ish games of each other.
100%.
Right.
It's been especially weird just seeing I don't know what I was thinking, and hindsight's 2020, but I had Winnipeg going oh God, I had them going maybe 8-6. I did not think that they were just going to run away with it like this. I thought they kind of hit a magic stride in 2019. And, I figured, they were the team that got hot, but what they did is not sustainable. And it turns out it is. And, just kind of disappointed how the Riders stumbled after their 3-0 start, especially those two losses against Winnipeg. That was especially tough, but you're right. It is super top heavy right now. And then you have teams like Ottawa and unfortunately your Elks, who are, kind of the basement dwellers right now.
Yep. So moving on, what has been the biggest surprise you've seen from the Riders this season?
One of the more pleasant surprises has been the emergence of Brady and Linnaeus and Kean Schaefer-Baker, young, talented receivers who stepped up. And, I thought the Riders were dead in the water when Shaq Evans went down, but, they've stepped up, and it's been really cool to see that, just Canadian talent step up to the plate the way they have. And obviously they went out and got Duke Williams because, whenever you have an opportunity to add talent like that, you go and do it. I don't think that's an indictment on who they have in that locker room right now. And then on defense, I would say Micah Tights. I mean, losing Cameron Judge and Solomon Elamimian from the 2019 roster, I thought this linebacking corps was one of the worst in the league. And Tights has stepped up, and they flipped Purifoy before Edom got hurt. I believe he was playing some Sam linebacker, which I thought was a smooth transition. So, I'm really happy with how those three guys, mainly Tights, Schaefer-Baker, and Linnaeus, have played. Definitely the most positive surprises in my opinion.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We have a swap of sorts of Edmonton and Saskatchewan guys who went to the NFL, and now they've come back on the other side, because Williams was in Edmonton before, then he went to the Buffalo Bills. Now he's back in the CFL. And we've got Derek Moncrief, who went to the Rams, now has come back north of the border with Edmonton. And I've thought Moncrief has adjusted pretty well so far. And yeah, obviously Williams is going to be competing for touches in the Riders offense because Shaq Evans, like you mentioned, and a lot of playmakers you have on the outside.
No, absolutely. I think he's definitely going to be competing for touches, and I think it takes time to develop chemistry too. I was talking about Cody and those 50-50 deep balls. I mean, it's great that they got a guy that can go up and get those, but they also got to be in sync as well. And that's where Shaq and Cody really connect well. Shaq Evans, that is. I worry about how quickly Williams and Cody can kind of develop that rapport. But I mean, I think when you have a guy as talented as Duke Williams and, has that NFL kind of swagger to him, I think, it should come together quite quickly. And if it doesn't, then like I said, the guys in that locker room, I believe, can carry the weight.
I can see that for sure. Now, here comes the really big question. Do you think Saskatchewan could upset Winnipeg in the playoffs? And if not, who could?
Okay, so if right now I got my Homer hat on, right? Vintage Rider logo. If I keep that on, 100% yes, of course they could. But I flip that back around and I'm trying to be a rational fan. I'm leaning towards 75-25. No, they cannot pull the upset against Winnipeg. I just don't see them being able to score enough points on that defense. And what we're seeing out of that Winnipeg front seven right now and what they're doing to opposing offensive lines worries me very much on what they would do to Saskatchewan's offensive line. I'm a big fan of the pieces they got there. Dan Clark, Logan Ferland, some of the different guys they've added there, young Canadian guys, Maitland Riley, another one. But I just think they need time to grow and develop together. And when you're going to play a veteran, hungry, potentially all-time defense, such as what we're seeing out of this 2021 Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, I think they're just really going to struggle to put up points against Winnipeg, especially when it's going to be late November, early December that they're meeting. If Saskatchewan makes it out of the West semifinal, Winnipeg on offense has such a well-balanced attack. I mean, we saw them after the Nichols injury in 2019 struggle with Chris Strevler because they just lacked that passing attack. And Collaros came in and it's just forcing defenses to respect both what they're able to do on the ground and his arm in the passing game. And he's rolling out and he looks like 2015 Collaros pre-knee injury. And it's been really, really just sickening for me to watch as a Riders fan, but as a football fan, it's been really cool to see how they've put it together. So I do think the Riders have the best chance at upsetting Winnipeg, but I don't think they can do it. So that's kind of where I'm standing right now. I think it's Winnipeg's Grey Cup to lose this year.
Yeah, I certainly think you've hit the nail on the head with that. It's theirs to lose, but I'm thinking the team with the best chance to knock off Winnipeg in the playoffs would probably be Hamilton. Here's why I think that. Obviously, at the start of the year, they were struggling. They weren't healthy, but you've seen Masoli and Evans, whoever's under center, they seem to be coming around. And I would say at this moment in time, they probably are going to stick with Masoli as their guy. So you have a team that is healthy and bent on revenge, could also play pretty good defense. I would give Hamilton the best chance. I'm not saying it's a good one, but I would say they had the best chance to pull it off.
I would agree. And I think another thing too that we overlook is the coaching staff, right? Hamilton has a very veteran coaching staff, Tommy Condell, and led by everyone there, Orlando Steinauer. I think Tommy's the offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so they got a good coaching staff there, and I trust them to go up against Mike O'Shea and Winnipeg and Richie Hall. Obviously, they were outcoached in 2019, but I trust them. Toronto, as we saw with Ryan Dinwiddie's, taking a knee when he shouldn't have taken a knee to try to kill the clock, not knowing BC still had a timeout left. There's still mistakes being made there. I don't fully trust McLeod Bethel Thompson. I like McLeod Bethel Thompson, so I don't know if Toronto would be a team to do it out of the East. And Calgary's just been so hot and cold this year, but obviously the addition of Reggie Bagleton could immensely help. But again, it's just Winnipeg just seems like such a powerhouse. I would probably agree Hamilton has the next best shot, and at least the best shot in the East from an Eastern team perspective to take down Winnipeg.
Gotcha. So where do you think Saskatchewan ultimately ends up with the number 2 seed in the West?
I think, they end up with the number 2 seed in the West. I think their season ends in the West semifinal. I think they're going to lose to Calgary. Their win against Calgary hasn't inspired me at all, really. Like it was a very grimy win, a good character win. Not every win's going to be pretty, but I think their two losses to Calgary showed me more than what that win showed me that they could potentially do. I know Saskatchewan would be at home and hosting the West semifinal. You'd have the 13th man, rabid fans. Bo Levi hasn't been playing great, but I mean, Kamar Jordan's been playing some of the best football in his career post that knee injury that he suffered all the way back in 2018. And now they're adding Reggie Bagleton. You got Hergy Mayala down there, Colton Hunchak, and that defense. I mean, God, they just added back oh God, Trey Roberson to go with Deshaun Amos. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about all that. The only weakness I can really see is on that offensive line and then on the defensive line too. I mean, Sean Lemon's been kind of having a career revival there, but I don't know if they can generate consistent pressure. But I just worry that the Riders are going to peter out, and Cody just hasn't shown, that moxie that he had in 2019 that believes me he can push this team past the West semifinal right now.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that same thing that Calgary, just with their veteran savvy, they just seem to have a better chance of beating Winnipeg than Saskatchewan would, I feel like. Obviously, their game early in the year, Rene Paredes missed that field goal on the last play of the game that would have knocked Winnipeg off, but, you know, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So it's how that
100%
went
right.
down. And Bo Levi Mitchell, after a terrible start to the year, he's come around. So I would not underestimate a guy like that. And like you mentioned, getting the band back together, anything could happen with that.
100% agree. I think every year, like, and I used to be one of these people, I'd write off Calgary, like, okay, this has got to be the year they fall off. They've lost XYZ. And, on the podcast, my friends and I used to do, we got to chat with Kamar Jordan. He just spoke to the consistency in that culture. And I think people don't truly reflect on that. They always just look at the depth chart and assume that, the next guy up isn't going to be something to fear or ponder. And we're always proven wrong. So, obviously this year it looks like in some respects everything's come to roost, but I still wouldn't write them off, man. I mean, with Bo Levi Mitchell and Dave Dickinson, I mean, they still got the two most important positions covered there, the head coach and the quarterback. So, I mean, I'm not writing them off. I'm very scared of them still.
Fair enough. So now shifting over to the Elks a little bit, how would you characterize their play so far this season?
Oh God, it depends how much profanity you allow on this podcast. But
Let's try and
honestly,
keep it PG-13.
I got you. I got you. Honestly, the first thing that came to my mind is I'm just utterly shocked on how bad they've been. In doing our preseason predictions, I think I had them finishing second or third in the West with an 8-6 record. Um, I didn't anticipate, like you said, I thought everyone would kind of be more sandwiched in the middle. So I think I had the Riders finishing first at like 9-4. And then I had Edmonton and Calgary tied for second, I believe, at 8-6 in my preseason predictions. And I thought with Trevor Harris and that connection with Jamie Elizondo and Darrell Walker and Greg Ellingson and I wasn't too aware of who was on that defense, but I figured that would kind of be covered for the most part. And honestly, just from that first game against Ottawa, something just didn't seem right. And talk about culture and the culture Calgary has. And Edmonton had a chance to snag a piece of that last year. I think right before COVID hit, they could have hired Mark Killam before they hired Scott Milanovich, the special teams coordinator for Calgary. And I thought maybe he would have been a better guy to try to build a culture. But I mean, you had a coach in Scott Milanovich who left before even a down of CFL football was played. And then you had
Mm-hmm.
Elizondo inserted there late. So, I mean, it's hard to build a culture. And I thought, you give them the benefit of the doubt and allow them time, but it just seems like between the COVID stuff and, we talk about culture, it's become almost like a cliche word, and the releasing of Kenny Stafford because he didn't fit the culture. And it's like, well, what culture are you trying to build there? Right. I mean, it's easy to throw that word around, but I think you have to live it and you really have to lead by example. And I'm just not sure the leadership team there has been, and that's trickled down to the play. And unfortunately to the fan apathy we see in Edmonton now, it looks like no one's going to the games anymore.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they're a dumpster fire right now. And I was trying to figure out where it went wrong myself because you looked at it and on paper, this team seemed to have a considerable amount of talent. Like we mentioned, From the start of the year, we had Trevor Harris, who I never thought he was an elite quarterback, but I always thought he was a good one. And then got James Wilder, who came over from the Argos. Yeah, looked like he had a really solid receiving core with Darrell Walker, who's just not gotten in any rhythm this year, Greg Ellingson, and the rest of those guys. On defense, I thought at least our D line was going to be good. Got Kwaku Boateng, Jake Serezna, Thomas Betts. Those guys, I think, will be fine. I was a little concerned on the back end, and the secondary so far, in my opinion, it's been up and down. Kind of like the pass rush, it's been up and down. I saw in the last game that we played, Edmonton led the CFL in yards allowed, but they were 8th in points allowed. And that just tells you the biggest problem. It's been turnovers. So the only reason we lost the opener to the Red Blacks was the pick 6. And, my thought after that game was like, hey, it's just the first one. Everybody's rusty. We'll get in gears eventually. And it never really happened. I think back to the victory over the BC Lions. It was after BC's left tackle went out of the game. Suddenly, everything just kind of shifted after that. Not that I really think that had an impact on Trevor Harris directly, but maybe the defense started making a couple plays, and from there, I guess that just kind of lifted the whole team. But yeah, you had those 2 anomaly games at BC and at Calgary where it looked like, okay, this is the Trevor Harris we all know. And then they just go back to Edmonton and just completely down the tubes. It was so odd. And I know the line has been problematic this year, but they're not totally to blame either.
I would agree. Again, I think Trevor Harris too. What you got to understand is that he's not going to be like a Bo Levi Mitchell or Mike Riley, who's going to stretch the field on you vertically. He's very much going to test the check down zones and hit the flats and those high completion throws like we saw in the 2019 East semifinals. Sorry, when they crossed over and he put up like God, what looked like 90% completion or something on Montreal and sent them home packing. And I'm just not sure where the disconnect was there and that he wasn't able to hit those. And, not Darrell Walker is very much like send him down the sideline and let him make a play. And I'm just not sure Harris is the guy to really connect with him on those. I mean, Walker had some success with McLeod Bethel Thompson, big arm, stretches the field vertically. So I just don't think there was a proper marriage in offensive philosophy and what Trevor Harris's strengths are, which again surprises the living heck out of me because Elizondo was his offensive coordinator for 2 or 3 years back in Ottawa. So yep. I really didn't understand why everything looked so disjointed. James Wilder was playing great individual performances at the start of the season, even though you guys weren't winning games. But it just seems like there just wasn't a connection there. And, I haven't watched much of Cornelius, so I'm not sure where his strengths lie, if he has a strong arm or not. But, I'm just very perplexed as to why the Harris thing didn't work out.
Well, maybe it was just could never get in a rhythm with the fact he's not very mobile against a line that wasn't playing well. Maybe that was part of it. And I also feel like Jamie Elizondo being thrown into the mix so late, I think the receiver struggled to get in sync as well. So even though Harris might have understood more than we think he does, can't really show it because the receivers just don't have that connection yet. But anyways, Harris is gone. So you mentioned Cornelius a little bit. Since I've watched him play, my thoughts are he does have a pretty strong arm, and I think he trusts it a little too much. I think he tries to bullet balls in there where they don't belong. And he's also started to get happy feet in the pocket. If he doesn't see the first or second option open up, he starts trying to get out of there. And we've seen that, especially one of the Winnipeg games where Jefferson caught up to him, strip sack, turns into a touchdown the other direction. But I mean, he's a young guy. I've felt like he has potential, but he's just not in a great situation. But I guess we'll jump into that a little bit more. So, do the Harrison Arbuckle trades surprise you?
They do, because I'm not used to seeing like big, I guess, quarterback moves this late in the season. And obviously it's a unique season in that where we are and with 14 games. But I mean, when you go into a season with a guy like Trevor Harris, who coming into it, you assume is the second or third or fourth best quarterback in the CFL, depending on who you ask, you wouldn't if you would have asked me in August if I saw Harris being traded, I would have thought you were crazy. Same with Arbuckle, who looked like he was being touted as the face of the franchise. McLeod Bethel Thompson was a late addition to what I thought was just an insurance policy, because Arbuckle was dealing with some hamstring issues. So I just really found that kind of strange. So yeah, I was very shocked to see Harris over in Montreal. And again, I'm very curious as to how the offense and that marriage is going to work between what their offensive philosophy is and what Harris's strengths are. Vernon Adams is very much kind of big player bust, and he creates plays with his legs and can be a little turnover prone, likes to take his chance with 50-50 balls, but very much likes to push the ball downfield. Harris is not that guy. So how does that change between, what they're calling, what the play designs are? Does Matthew Schultz still get the reins there? I'm not too sure what that's going to look like. From the Elks perspective with Arbuckle, I think some of his strengths are similar to Harris's in that he likes those high completion throws, likes to push the short and intermediate routes. People compared him a bit to Bo Levi Mitchell, but I think Marshall Ferguson said it best on CF Perspective that, Bo Levi very much likes to push the ball downfield, hit those sideline shots, hit those deep shots and the seam routes. Arbuckle's not really that guy. So I'm hoping they don't run into an issue where they're expecting Arbuckle to stretch the field vertically again. Whereas I think his strengths kind of rely more in the similar strengths that Harris has. But I think Arbuckle, you get a little more athleticism, barring that hamstring holds up. You'll be able to move the pocket a little more.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown right there. I was a little surprised by the timing of it all. I've talked about this a little bit on this show before, that whenever Harris was shipped out, I thought, all right, this is a full changing of the guard, that they're going to try and build with Cornelius as their guy. And then just a couple weeks later, the Arbuckle trade goes down. Obviously, Toronto, it seemed like he couldn't be kept there affordably, so they shipped him out. And I don't know how much we're going to see of Arbuckle before the end of the year. Let it be said, he is the only quarterback to defeat the Bombers this season, so there's that. But obviously the consistency's just not been there. He threw a couple interceptions against Hamilton and otherwise, so it's kind of weird just how he bounced around, going from Calgary in 19, then over to Ottawa. They couldn't sign him. They goes to Toronto. Now he's shipped back out to the West on his fourth team in 2 seasons.
The Kevin Glenn career arc.
It's getting there. So this just makes me question, what is this organization's plan with this? Because Jamie Elizondo and Taylor Cornelius, they had time together in the XFL before that league ceased operations. And I thought, okay, we're going to have another year of trying to build around the Cornelius Elizondo duo. But now with Arbuckle coming in, it seems like it could be an insurance policy for the next coach, which makes me once again ask, is Jamie Elizondo a lame duck?
I don't think so. I think this move to get Arbuckle was a Hail Mary attempt to save his job. The way I see it is, I think Sunderland's gone either way. I think that
Hopefully.
might, hopefully, but I think the next GM that comes in, just with how much turnover there's been, he might be inclined to keep Elizondo, and Elizondo's pitch to the organization might be, hey, I got 2 really young quarterbacks. Give me a full offseason to work with these guys. We didn't get, many camps. We didn't really get a proper training camp with all the COVID protocols. Let me have this quarterback competition. We have Nick Arbuckle. We have Cornelius, 2 potential guys to build the franchise around. let me work this out and see where we can go. And let's build around these two young talents. So I kind of saw it as like a job saving, kind of move, maybe from Sunderland's perspective too, saying like, hey, look, I'm trying over here. I'm not just sitting here around. But I just think with the other stuff that's been going on, it's tough to justify keeping Sunderland, I think, at this point. But yeah, I think Elizondo is going to get one more year. I think 2022 will be his make or break season. I don't see him getting fired. Sunderland, I'm 50-50 on.
Okay. Yeah, he was thrown into a really bad situation coming in so late in the game, and there was excitement and expectations around this team just for the return of the league and all that. And I can see how a lot of people would not be happy with what Elizondo has done. But again, just makeshift staff trying to throw a team together, in all honesty. I can't blame him. People's opinion of him throughout the season has been really up and down. Like after the 2 wins, people were thinking, yeah, he did a really good job in the chess match against Dave Dickinson. And then just in this 6-game losing streak, the team has just looked lifeless for the most part. And just, I mean, you can't give him all the blame. I think he's got something to work with, and I hope he does get another season, like you mentioned. But yeah, he'll be on a short leash regardless. I mean, if there were some absolute you cannot afford not to hire this guy that was interested in coaching the team, then okay, you might consider it. But otherwise, if you get a new guy, you're right back to where you started. And I don't like that.
Yeah, the only thing I could see that name being is Mark Killam. I think he really wanted that Edmonton job back in 2020. And, you have a potential to bring in a guy who, I know he's a special teams coach, but we've seen it with Mike O'Shea and Craig Dickinson now. Those guys really know how to rally the team as a whole. And they don't necessarily have to specialize in offense or defense. They can leave that to their coordinators. And I think Killam would do a really good job, building a proper culture there. And maybe Elizondo needs another year to do that, right? We can't write him off right away, but keep your eye out for Mark Killam. I think that'd be a really high quality, high character hire that the fans in Edmonton and abroad can rally around.
Gotcha. Speaking of that, I don't know how many openings there are really going to be this off season for head coaches, because Paul LaPolice in Ottawa, I think he's definitely going to get more time. I don't see BC getting rid of Rick Campbell after 1 year, and all the other teams are going to be in the playoffs. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to really judge them so quickly. So, I mean, Edmonton might be the only opening, if there are any.
100% agree.
Right on. So, I have to ask, did you like the name change going to the Elks?
I loved it. I think it was time, just based on everything that was going on, and it was overdue. But with the Elks change, I think it was perfect. I love the logo. It's modern. I love that they kept the colors. That's great. I like the antlers on the helmet. I hate what they did to the uniforms. I think they're very lifeless in the sense that they just went to the white numbers away from the yellow numbers. They took away even more of the striping and kind of piping they had on the jerseys. I think the jerseys that Edmonton had when they won the Grey Cup in 2015 are amongst the best, with like the shoulder stripes and everything they had there. So I love the Elks from a branding perspective. I think it's fresh. I think it engages young fans, and you can move past the whole controversy with the previous name. I just wish they would have done a little more with the uniforms. I was really disappointed to see what essentially looked like Green Bay Packer ripoffs. And I know CFL fans hate getting their stuff compared to NFL fans, but that's what it looked like to me. I think with what you had in the yellow numbers was unique, and what you had with the previous kind of trim and everything going on with the jersey was great. Just really hate to see what they did with that, but maybe again, COVID shortened season could have had something to do with that. Maybe they'll do a proper uniform rollout. I'm a uniform nerd. I don't know if I come across that way. But I love kind of inspecting those things and just seeing what teams do and how they engage their fans and where they bring back throwbacks or come up with new stuff. But really, like when I saw the Elks uniforms, I thought they nailed it. They nailed everything with the rebrand up to that point.
That's fair. I remember the hype video that they released when they initially announced the name, and I was like, this is how it's done. That was just such a good video. And I remember on Twitter, their official account tweeted at the Packers, was like, hey, can we copy your homework or something like that? It was great.
Yeah.
My personal thought after seeing that, I was like, it was like they took the Vikings uniforms and put Packer colors on them. Because you have those stripes on the sleeve and all of that. And just like, I don't mind the look at all. I really don't. Now, the decal on the helmet, I kind of wish they'd kept the double E. I really liked that. And you have the two different iterations of the elk, one where the antler is on the rest of the logo, and the other where it's a little bit above it. And I just thought that looks kind of goofy. But, overall, not too bad. We've certainly seen a lot worse.
Yes.
That we can be assured of. But yeah, choosing that name tied with the history, winning a Grey Cup whenever they were called that decades ago, I thought it was pretty good for that. I remember when they released the 7 finalists, my choice was the Eagles. I thought, yeah, it's a little conservative play, but it works. It just sort of does. Whenever I saw Eclipse and Evergolds, I'm like, what? Who chose these?
Or Energy, I thought was strange. It's just like, it sounds like a Pee Wee hockey team's name, Energy. So I think they made the right decision.
Yeah. At first, I was lukewarm on the Elks, and then I sort of came around on it, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm content. And while part of the reason I chose the team was because of the Eskimos name, I was like, it's not worth it to have this discussion 8 million times. Let's just go ahead. It's just a name. Let's just move to the future. And so, I didn't mind. So, all right, get to the real important part now. So, give us your prediction for the next 2 weeks with this home and home. What do you think happens?
I think the Riders, as a Rider fan here, I got my Homer hat on here. Again, if you want to talk about logos, this kind of looks like a Safeway logo, but I think it's still very well revered. Anyways, Riders are the Elks are gonna make this game in Edmonton a lot closer than it needs to be. I think I just see mistakes kind of coming up. It's just going to be one of those games where, you call it a trap game. I think that's a perfect iteration of what's going to happen here. I see Saskatchewan coming out victorious, but it's kind of going to it's going to leave a bad taste in Rider fans' mouth. Probably what like the BC game did to Toronto fans. They won that game, but you left that kind of feeling a little dirty. I think so it's going to be some kind of close, weird score like 24-19 Saskatchewan, where things are just a little too close for comfort for the level of competition that they're playing. That's no disrespect to your Elks. That's just kind of the way they've been playing this year.
Right.
I think for when things go back to Saskatchewan, it'll be the wake-up call they need, and I think they'll handle business. It'll be probably closer to what we saw when Saskatchewan played Toronto in Saskatchewan there, and they won that game handily by about 15 or 16 points, I believe. So I have the Riders winning both. That's with and without my Homer hat on. But, I think these are must wins for Saskatchewan just to kind of get that confidence, get that train rolling going to the West semifinal. So my prediction of a loss in the West semifinal doesn't come true. But I don't think we're going to feel especially great coming out of Friday's game in Edmonton. Just I think it's going to be a little too close.
Okay. Personally, I see a split with both of the home teams winning this game. I think, just last home game of the season, we're going to go all out, just trying to get one in front of however many home fans show up and get a good game out of Wilder and finally get the monkey off our back a little bit, pull the upset. I remember we were playing Winnipeg at home. It was one of our best games of the season. I really thought, obviously, the opposition was just too much to overcome, but it made me see the team hasn't thrown in the towel yet. So I say just go out with a bang, give the home fans something to cheer about before our final 3 games on the road.
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if Saskatchewan lost this game Friday, but I think they'll squeak it out. And then the one, like you said, back in Regina should be a pretty clean game, unless in some weird scenario the Riders clinch second if Calgary loses or something where it falls on their lap and we have Isaac Harker out there, who I like. I just don't see the Riders losing that one in Regina at all.
I'd agree with you on that. So now, moving to a segment that I've been doing on this show quite a bit. I've talked about quarterback power rankings, and usually I start out at the bottom with who I think is number 9, then work our way up to number 1. So I've started out with number 9. I'll have the quarterback of Ottawa. Whether it's Caleb Evans or Duck Hodges, that offense hasn't been going anywhere all year.
I would agree with that. That's who I had on my list as well in front of me.
All right. Number 8, going with Taylor Cornelius.
I have the exact same thing.
All right. Number 7 is where things start to get really dicey for me. I have McLeod Bethel Thompson.
Ooh, okay. Number 7, I have Nick Arbuckle.
Okay, so you had.
Oh, sorry, that'd be number 8 for me. My mistake.
Okay.
Yeah. Or no, sorry, whatever. Yeah, whatever number you're in. Are you just looking at starters?
Yeah, I was just looking at starters. I may not have made that clear, but all right.
I guess, yeah. I'll take out Arbuckle then. And so I had Caleb Evans, River Ottawa starting, Taylor Cornelius. Okay, then let's go Trevor Harris.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if Adams would be back this week or not, but yeah, a lot of it becomes conditional upon that.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6, I'm going with Cody Fajardo.
I have Bo Levi Mitchell there right now.
I had Levi Mitchell 5th. It was kind of tough to decide between those two.
Jeremiah Mazzoli 5th.
Okay. I know that this is sort of ambiguous because I didn't specify whether it's looking at the season as a whole or in this exact moment. That's the thing about power rankings, is there is some inherent ambiguity about all of them. But anyways, moving on to number 4, I had Vernon Adams.
Okay. With him being injured, I didn't include him on the list. So I have Cody Fajardo at number 4.
Okay. Number 3, I had Mike Riley.
Likewise.
Number 2, I had Masoli or Evans, whoever's under center for Hamilton.
Nice. I had McLeod Bethel Thompson there. I think he had a pretty good game, all things considered, against BC, and the franchise essentially gave him the keys. So I think that's a big confidence boost for him.
Yeah, I guess I've just never quite been sold on him. He seems just way too up and down for me. We saw him a couple weeks ago, was one of the down swings.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it could be some selective attribution bias because you'll go by what you see with your own eyes, and I was unable to see the game against BC. So,
right.
Yeah.
Makes
There's
sense.
a little bit of that, but obviously, number 1, it's not really debatable. Guy leads the league in touchdown passes, passing yards, Zach Collaros.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right. So now let's just go around for this weekend's games. Obviously, we talked about Saskatchewan at Edmonton. We're split on that one. Also, Friday, we got BC at Hamilton. I got the Ticats in that one.
I too have the Ticats taking that one.
Yeah, I think BC is unfortunately slated to be 7th in the league and miss out on the playoffs. It looks like they have imploded.
Yeah, that's weird. Like I remember how highly touted that Riders BC game was, God, it feels like a month and a half ago, I suppose now, when they were like 4-3 or 4-2 going into that game. And since they lost that game on that questionable Cody Fajardo sneak that I think was in, Homer hats on, they've just proceeded to kind of get stomped out of every game they've been in. So it just seems like the team has no confidence or, mojo whatsoever.
Yeah. It's really strange because obviously Riley's shown that he's still got it, and people have talked about them having a pretty good young defense. They got some playmakers there. Just like, I'm not sure what went wrong. I actually thought BC would be a playoff team this year.
Mm-hmm. The way she goes sometimes, it hasn't come together for them. And I think they got to figure out the Mike Riley, Nathan Rourke thing. I think Rourke's showing some flashes that they're going to have a decision to make next year.
I think Riley gets another year, but 23, it might be Rourke's time to take over.
Mm.
But now moving on to Saturday, we've got Toronto going to Ottawa. I'm taking the Boatmen in this one.
Yeah, I too will be taking Toronto on that one. I don't trust Ottawa in any circumstance at any point this season.
Unless they're playing Edmonton.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going against the Elks seems to be their superpower.
There we go, eh? The Elks kryptonite.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Not sure if you can point it out as the Elks being a weakness whenever it's not really, they don't have a strength.
Yeah, fair enough.
But anyways, the last game of the weekend is perhaps the most interesting. We got Montreal going to Winnipeg. Now, if Vernon Adams were totally healthy, I would actually give Montreal a chance of pulling off this upset. But even if he does play even a little bit, he's not going to be up to what he used to be. And just at home, that Bombers defense is on another level. So I wanted to pick the upset, but I just couldn't rationalize doing it.
Same thought in my head. I wanted so badly to pick Montreal, and I wasn't even sure, like Vernon Adams, I didn't know he was that close to returning. I figured he was done for the year with, like, what was it, a shoulder injury that he suffered?
Oh,
So,
man, I can't remember off the top of my head.
yeah. And so I thought, okay, I don't trust Harris. He's kind of not playing with a lot of confidence right now. And Matthew Schultz is a little green. So I for sure picked Winnipeg, but if Adams can be like 80% of who he is, I'd be more inclined to pick an upset, but I don't even know if he'll be like half the QB he is if he's coming back earlier than anticipated.
Right. Well, that sounds good. Now, please remember to check out True Green and Gold on YouTube, True Green and Gold, and on Twitter at TGAG Pod. And Stephen, where can they find your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Steve Bolen22, and you can find the Amateur Agency on Twitter at Amateur Agency. We've been taking a little hiatus since July, just a little mental health break. Personal lives are getting a little busy, but in 2022 we could be back on the rails. But I'm always tweeting about football. If you want to give me a follow at Steve Bolen, Bolen 22 on Twitter, and love to chat football. So any discussion you guys want to throw my way or make fun of my rider takes, I'm here for it. And certainly really appreciative for you having me on and having the chance to chat football. It's been a long time since I hopped on the mic. And so definitely was super excited when you reached out. And I'm going to encourage all my friends to check out and followers to check out your podcast and work.
All right. Definitely appreciate the shout out. And I definitely appreciate you coming on. Brought a new dynamic to this show and gone on a little longer than a lot of our episodes. I've kind of advertised being sort of in bite-sized pieces. This one, a lot longer, but I think definitely some great information that you brought us tonight. So thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.